All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to October. I can't believe it's October already. Edition of Meet Our Contributors. Today is Wednesday, October 3rd. My name is Paris Pittman. I'm a community manager for Kubernetes at Google. Today, we have a lovely, esteemed panelist of mentors for you. The majority of them actually have a University of Michigan connection, believe it or not. So U of M is taking over, taking over today, in some weird way. I mean, of course, weird way, as in like the weird that it's common, not love you, love you all U of M folks. So like, I don't want to get any U of M tweets at me or anything like that. Anyway, this is a Mentors on Demand series. We constantly hear from contributors that they would like mentors. That is a very resource heavy initiative. So, what we're doing is putting contributors on the line for an hour to ask any questions that you would normally have for a mentor. Things like, how do I get started? Or I'm an approver and I'd like to be a maintainer. What's the process there? Things along those lines. Each one of these mentors is diverse with their experience within the project, as well as their backgrounds entirely. So you'll get a good sense of where things are with their answers. And the best part is they might not know the answer either. And they are allowed to say things like, I don't know, but this is probably where I would go to find the answer. So please feel free to ask anything, whether it's considered non-technical or technical. And that brings us to the how to answer, or excuse me, ask questions. We're all hanging out right now in the Meet Our Contributors Slack channel on the Kubernetes team that has 50,000 people on it. Crazy, I know. And also, I do hang out a little bit on Twitter. So if you'd like to DM me there, that's fine. Or shout at me through Twitter as well. I do get most of my questions through direct message on Slack because folks would rather keep it anonymous, and that's totally fine as well. So right now we have about 6 questions queued up. And we will cut the session short today if we don't have any more, so that'll give some folks back their time. All right. And lastly, we do have a code of conduct. That means we all like to treat each other with respect on any communication forum we have. And right now we are fiddling with Slack, Twitter, Zoom, YouTube, etc. So everybody that's on any of those channels, please be respectful to each other and please be awesome. The steering committee edition is later on. So at 1 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. UTC, check your time zone. We have 3 awesome steering committee members with us to answer your governance related questions, or really anything, because some of them do know everything almost. We have Brendan Burns. We have Aaron Quickenberger, and we have Timothy St. Clair on with us at 1 o'clock Pacific. So please join us there. All right, let's go right into intros for our mentors. I will go left to right based on the blurb on my YouTube, on my Zoom right now. First one, Jeff, do you want to give us a quick intro? And then, oh, by the way, Jeff's the one that is live streaming up for us right now. So thanks, Jeff.
Yep. Hi, my name's Jeffrey Sika. I currently work at the University of Michigan, Advanced Research Computing Technology Services. I facilitate faculty members doing research and other people doing research, and we also maintain a couple Kubernetes clusters here that we let researchers consume and publish services. I am also part of SIG Contribx and SIG UI, so that's kind of my role in the Kubernetes project.
Thanks, Jeff, again today for filling in for George.
Not a problem.
You're loved, George. We miss you. Anyway, all right, Bob, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Bob Gillen. I also work for the University of Michigan, also with Advanced Research Computing and Technology Services, because Jeff is like right there, and pretty much do the exact same thing, except my focus is really mostly just contributor experience.
Thanks, Bob, for joining us today. All right, and Sen.
Hey, my name is Dan. I'm also a UM alumni. Go Blue. I'm currently working for Google GKE Enterprise team, but I'm mostly working for community, basically like everything behind your PR, like why my PR gets tested and how it gets merged. mostly in SIG testing, but also part of SIG contracts and also SIG release. Nice to meet you.
Thanks, Zen, for joining today. I know us Pacific Coast time folks like to start things after 10 a.m. and for us it is 7:40 a.m. right now. So we are ready for breakfast at the very least. All right, and then Stephen, I think you're joining us from the East Coast, right? So your day has already begun. Oh no, Stephen, we can't hear you. There you go. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Awesome. Hey, I'm Stephen Augustus. I have no affiliation with the University of Michigan. I work for Red Hat right now as a specialist solutions architect for the OpenShift Tiger team. So I sell Kubernetes to you. On the community side, I am the product management chair for SIGPM. I formerly did release team stuff, so for release the 111 and 112 release, and I'm the SIG Azure chair. So.
Awesome, and thanks for all your help with future and past releases. It's awesome the way y'all wrangle folks in that, especially because it's a lot of hard work, but it pays off. So thank you so much for all your work with the release team. All right. So let's get right into the first question. I received that on direct message this morning. What the heck is Tide? I've been hearing and reading a lot about it. I have not, unfortunately, caught up to the latest and greatest. And why should we care about Tide? Sen immediately took itself off mute on that one.
Answer that. So if you don't know Tide, you probably know something called SymQ. SymQ was something that manages merge your PR after you collect like LGTM approval labels and all your test passes. But we have tons of issue with the SymQ. For example, it only works for Kubernetes, which means if you want to have SymQ on another Kubernetes repo, you need to like deploy another instance. And also like rebooting it is super stateful. That's why we migrate to Tide. Tide uses GitHub queries. So, which means if you want to add another repo, you just add another repo to our GitHub query. So basically it will merge your PRs faster and has less painful when the release team goes into code freeze and code stop.
And to follow up, like what type of contributor will be affected by this the most? Do you feel like it's somebody reviewing and merging? Do you feel like it's somebody that's actually submitting their PR that might interact with Tide the most, or all of the above?
Anyone opens a PR under their PR status page, they will see like a little context say Tide and what's going on with Tide. That means is your PR currently able to merge or something? Tide will say, hey, your PR currently cannot merge because you failed this required test, or your PR doesn't have a LGTM label. And we have so Proud has a PR dashboard. If you click into the status, you will see like exactly what your PR is missing before it can be merged into master or into the head.
Awesome. Thanks, Anne. Does anybody have anything to share about their experiences with Tide or what they've seen thus far?
It's magic. If Tide is working properly and all of the wizardry that happens on the test info side is going well, you have a really great experience in terms of like submitting, getting reviews for PRs. So Tide is just kind of the thing that takes a batch of submitted and merged things, or rather, and washes them in and washes them out. Aaron has a way better explanation for what Tide was. But yeah, I mean, if everything is happening well on the test info side, you kind of don't notice it. It's just magic. Love it.
Awesome. All right, next question. The age-old question in open source of how exactly do you manage your time? Especially when it comes to the fact that I think I can speak for a lot of us, not necessarily all of us on this panel, but I know that a lot of us have Kubernetes as even a hobby and also a job, some component of Kubernetes anyway. So how do we manage time when things like your hobbies and your work sort of blur? And then just a general, how do you manage your time?
So I tend to keep just checklists of everything that I need to do down to like the small bite-sized piece. And then it feels really satisfying checking them off. Even if it's like a hobby, I'll break down like a pet project into those little bite-sized chunks so I can kind of try and manage my time between that and other things like housework and whatnot. So it comes down to just, for me, organizing things and at least either keeping a physical checklist or a mental checklist.
For the organization piece, I actually started doing something kind of interesting. Or I do a to me in Slack to see all of the conversations that I've had across the week. I kind of like make a to-do list based on that stuff. I've also gotten really into making sure that if there's something I think that could be fixed, I file an issue for it and I mark it as like help wanted. So that people have the opportunity to contribute via those issues. From the day-to-day perspective, part of my work is doing OpenShift and doing essentially enterprise Kubernetes. So I get a chunk of my day that's dedicated to, or a chunk of my week or month that's dedicated specifically to community evangelism and making sure. I mean, it's great because like things that I learned from the community, I take back to my team, and things that I learned from my team, I take back to the community. So managing my time wise, I think Kubernetes is both a job and a hobby for me. So I will pop up at 3 a.m. and go, oh, I think I can fix this. So it's all dependent on your level of interest and really if your job can accommodate it.
Let me see. So for me, I'm actually pretty bad at time management. So I normally keeps my email open like with a tab to me, like with anything assigned to me, you CC to me, I tend to reply like immediately or very quickly, or also react to Slack pings. Hey, prow is down, or hey, my PR is not merging. Can you take a look? Why is that? Also, I have a little trick. Whenever I don't have time, I assign the issue to Ben, who is like typing 2x faster than me.
All right. And Bob, did you have anything to add to that?
Honestly, it's pretty similar to Jeff. That really shouldn't come as any surprise if you know he and I. I have a little, like I use Google Keep, and I just have like a list of all the tasks and things like that, and I just churn through them. He and I, we don't really work on Kubernetes for our day job, but it's definitely a big hobby for both of us.
All right. And the Meet Our Contributors room is lighting up right now with questions. I've got 2 on a thread, and then we've got 3 in the room. First question that came in. This individual knows basic Golang and some JavaScript, also some advanced Python and intermediate skills on Shell. Where do they start getting their hands dirty with Kubernetes? Where do they start contributing? They read a lot of detail yesterday and end up spending about 6 to 8 hours on it. But at the end of it, they still feel kind of clueless as far as like where they actually contribute. In the process, they also found a few bugs, but didn't know where to log them, how to file, what labels to use, and so on. What is either your suggestions or your I guess just suggestions on maybe a critical path for this individual to start contributing?
Yeah, so I can say for sure. I think a lot of your contributions will depend on where your interests lie. So there are people who naturally gravitate towards docs or testing or Kubernetes core, or they're working on a specific cloud provider and they want to contribute the cloud provider code, right? So I would say try to figure out where your interests lie exactly. It's such a vast project that we have an opportunity to contribute everywhere. What I can say is that all of the magic that Sen was talking about, and test infra, I think is a really great way to contribute back to the project. It's a lot of magic gremlins in the background, but it helps the velocity of the overall project if you contribute there. Docs is another great place to contribute because this is essentially a lot of people's ingress point for the project. So being able to read good, consistent, technically intent docs are great. So.
Another great way to start, I would say, is probably look for help wanted label. Most of them, maybe Steve just made them. So those are the issues that maintainers think, for example, people like me, I think this can be a pretty good first time issue for a new contributor. It's pretty straightforward, and feel free just to send us a PR to fixing that issue or add this new feature. Also, to add on, like where to find the owner for the issue or find the reviewer for your PR. I would say my little trick is just click blame and see whoever touches this piece of code previously and assign to him.
Bob?
Honestly, it was covered pretty well. One of the best ways you can just like sort of learn to get started, the contributor guide in the community repo. And there was a great video from Copenhagen of the new contributor workshop. And there definitely will be one run again at both at Shanghai and later on in Seattle.
Good plug, good plug. I was going to do it if you didn't do it. Yes, there is a new contributor workshop in Seattle, and it is quickly filling up, y'all. So if you have not purchased your ticket yet for the contributor summit, especially for the new contributor workshop, please do so as soon as possible. It will sell out. But to this individual's question too, there is a SIG list. SIGs are special interest groups. That's what owns the code in Kubernetes. And if you have a lot of this advanced Python and intermediate skills with Shell and some Go, then I'm sure you could help out with groups like Test Infra who deal with a lot of automation and some other groups as well. And then to capitalize on that, I know a lot of folks will join multiple SIGs when they're first getting started, especially those that they have interest with. So for instance, if you're interested in IPv6, you probably should join SIG networking, and you could be a fly on the wall of their meetings because you do not have to, immediately jump into a meeting and start adding value right away. You can see kind of how they do things, what their inner workings is like. And that's very important because then you get to know how exactly they assign work. And then also some of our special interest groups in the beginning of their meetings will even say, do I have any new contributors on the line? Please introduce yourselves, because that will also establish your intent and you'll gain credibility with the group. And then they can start sort of mentoring you on an unofficial basis. That's really how it happens unofficially within Kubernetes. It's people see that there's helpful folks out there that are willing to contribute, that have certain skills. And then they put things like labels out there, like what Zen and Steven were talking about, because they know that there's a pool of people out there that are going to help them. So there's a good first issue label, there's a help wanted label, and then always comment on the PR and say that I'd like to do this, but I just need some help. That's just kind of my 2 cents, I think. But when I first onboarded to the project, I know I joined almost every SIG, which is crazy because it's like 30, it was like 30 plus at the time. Now it's like 40 plus. But it just helped me kind of figure out like where gaps are, where holes are, where people need help with, and where they can add value. And then Stephen, I know you had a hand raised.
Yeah, so I just wanted to note that like if you join a SIG meeting or some event or something, like don't be afraid to speak up and say hi. We are all really friendly. I think all of us, right? And we're happy to have new contributors and figure out how to kind of guide you on that path. So please, I notice occasionally some people, if they're new contributors, they may be silent on the SIG meetings, but you don't need to do that. Say hi, say what's up, ask how you can help. Definitely.
Awesome. And then we are also working on sort of a non-code guide as well. So if you're on the line right now watching us or listening to us, just know that we are putting together a guide that will give tips on contributing to Kubernetes in other ways that's not necessarily code, because there's tons of us that do, and this will be the documentation of that. In a similar question, someone in the chat also asked for like a janitor list of projects. Is there some way that they could find out like little itty bitty things that need work? I know we now have the discuss board, but does anybody want to add to that outside of the labels for help wanted and good first issue?
There's actually a role board on Discuss now too, where you can like SIGs and groups can sort of post requests for looking for help in specific areas, or if you have a certain set of skills, like you mentioned, knowing Python, all that, post that there, and they'll check in every once in a while and might ping you about it.
Bob, why don't you bring that up on the screen so people can see? And then Sen and Jeff, if you have anything to add to that while he brings it up, go ahead and jump in.
I was actually looking for the Kates.io link that has a list of all the good first issues. So, un momento.
Oh, awesome. Even better. All right. And it looks like Bob just put the roll board in the chat link as well. All right. Okay. So there's an individual in chat that wants to know what's the best path towards member, reviewer, approver, etc. And does anybody want to explain a little bit about community membership while they do that?
I can go, I guess.
Do it.
Well, no one else jumped up. So the ladder goes like this. You can just start contributing, and you don't have to be a Kubernetes org member. Eventually, after a certain period of time, you can apply to become a Kubernetes org member. That requires, and I'm probably the worst person to be saying this, so please correct me when I'm wrong. You need 2 current people in owners files to vouch for you, I think, to become an org member. Or is that higher up?
So it's members in general.
You members just need vouch for you, and then once you become ascend to reviewer and then approver, each of those requires a little more. I'm going to pull it up because I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, so it's 2 sponsors. I'm going to try to do it from the top of my head too. So 2 sponsors within the org already. Depending on the org, it might be Kubernetes or Kubernetes SIGs or blah 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 blah. Then you also need to have some weight of contributions, right? So I think there's a cap of or there's an amount of contributions that we expect, and your sponsors should kind of be looking out for if they're going to sponsor you as well.
How did they get sponsors?
Hang out, honestly. My sponsor was, I think it was Jason Caleb, and that's because I was hanging out in the SIG release stuff and in the Azure meetings. So just hang out, say hi,
and you can start contributing because my 2 sponsors wound up being George and then Conrad from UI, because I was doing a lot of UI work.
Yeah. Definitely hop in the SIG Slack channels and just talk to people.
you can easily find sponsors when you find your when you open your PR and find your reviewers, because you're most likely be interacting with your reviewer. Your reviewer say, hey, can you fix this nit? And can you bike shed this thing? And after a few rounds, you probably get along or not with your reviewers. And you only apply after you like have a few contributions, so you probably know a lot of people within that SIG already.
Yep, and usually, like I mentioned previously with the word intent, when you're introducing yourself to people, especially at SIG meetings or what have you, and you are a new contributor or even a current contributor too. Current contributors, I think, also aren't doing this well, which is communicating what their kind of career path and intent is within the project. But once you declare that, I think that's when people start kind of opening up and saying, okay, this isn't someone that's just going to come in and fix like a period on our documentation or something like that. This is someone that wants to definitely dig in and contribute more with us. And then you'll start to find that your sponsors will come much easier when you say, I have the intentions of becoming a member of the Kubernetes organization. And then folks will start to talk to you about that. So definitely let folks know who you are, why you're here, what you like about Kubernetes. And that really starts good conversations because then like these three folks found out they were University of Michigan grads and now they're best friends for life. All right. Next question. This individual wants to know what are some common trends that you see as reviewers and above when it comes to either PRs not merging or getting rejected. So what are some things that you can tell other contributors to look out for that you feel like are common things that you see for folks not getting PRs merged?
So I think first and foremost, if you're understand the scope of the work that you're going to do and decide if it's big in scope or smaller in scope, something that you can tackle and is not doesn't cause undue friction on the project. I think that would be one of the first parts. If you think you're going to be tackling something larger, definitely speak to the SIG, right? Because like these features roll into like an enhancement will roll into some bigger statement of work for that SIG. So if it's already planned, you want to make sure that you're not stepping on anyone's toes. And if there is a previous design proposal or kept for that feature that you want to bring to bear, it's good to understand like what people's intent was in designing it before going forward with it. So definitely work with work with the SIG, work with, like Sen was saying, the known like reviewers and approvers that you already have relationships with before you decide to tackle something large. Secondarily, I would say test failing. Test failures are the things that keep PRs from merging. So be aware of, we have multiple repos, so it's not just Kubernetes. It's community and everything in between, test infra, and cloud providers and things like that. Make sure you understand the testing structure for the specific repo, right? So usually we'll have instructions about how to contribute for that repo and tests that you should run, like making sure that you run, I don't know, update labels or something if you want to create a new label and test infra and doing verify labels before you submit the PR. So that's something I ran into recently. Yeah.
Those are all super, super good tips too. Sen, what's yours?
Yeah. So as a testing for owner, I would say I've seen things that people assign me a giant PR without any context. So that's something as a reviewer I probably don't want to see. I will probably ask you for a design doc before you like send a giant change, or at least open an issue to discuss or discuss under an existing issue. Say, hey, I'm interested in adding this feature or fixing this bug. And this is the approach I'm going to take. And we'll probably say, hey, sounds good, go ahead. And then you open a PR and mark, this PR is for fixing this issue or implementing this feature. And we can go from there.
So,
go ahead. No, go ahead, Steven.
Yeah. So, kind of to Sen's point, submitting a large PR is, I mean, once you submit it, someone has to review it, right? So I think there's something that Sarah says fairly often, which is there are people behind the process, right? So understanding that every PR that you submit or every movement that you do or comment that you send somewhere, like someone's behind that. Right. So eventually they have to review it or approve it or, like put their stamp on it or respond to it in some way. So just being cognizant of the fact that the PR review process and design doc review process and kept submission and things like that, like all of that takes up people's time. So making sure that you're doing it in a courteous manner, I guess.
Yes. And then, all right, let's go to the next question. Those were really good. All right, we have a few more here. What's one of the most difficult things about being a maintainer?
Time management.
That was Jeff was super quick on that one.
But I mean, that is usually the biggest problem, and it's also the biggest bottleneck. Is if you're a reviewer, you're trying to thoroughly review a PR. If you're actively trying to code, is this your day job or not? And if not, it's time management for me.
Sen looks like he might be in agreement with that. Sen, you?
Yeah, same thing. So basically trying to, the more things you own, there will be more issues and PRs sent on your way, and like how to prioritize the open source work with your daily work is a good problem to solve.
The thing, especially when you have limited sets of time, is definitely be upfront and honest about how much you can actually get back, like how much you can actually dedicate to something. Don't take on something bigger than you really should. And it can kind of you'll really want to, but in general, it's better if you tackle something you can actually complete and work on.
So yeah, so I think that kind of why we're here speaks to the intent. Being a maintainer is hard, or being anywhere near a maintainership is hard for a large project like this. And the only way that we're going to continue to succeed is if we multiplex those efforts and get more contributors involved. So we're hoping that we can build a framework for contributors to get involved and kind of push them up to approver and maintainer status for the project overall. Having more people will help us.
Definitely. And I think having more people who are reviewing and approving will also help us. So if you are a member currently right now and you have done a few contributions and you feel like being a reviewer is something that you really would like to do, talk to the technical leads of the SIG, talk to people in the owner's files, let them know that's something that you'd like to do. Because if they know that you'd like to do it, then there might be mentorship opportunities, just homegrown. Somebody might have a couple hours in their day to give you to really start to talk about how to do a good code review within that code base. So definitely speak up. All right.
So,
yep, go ahead.
You might, if you're involved in Kubernetes, you might already be doing reviewing and not realizing it. So I think it's also important to prop yourself up. And if you think you should be an approver for a specific part of the code base, suggest that to the chairs and team leads. As far as I know, we're not doing like, I don't think SIGs are taking lists of like, okay, this person has submitted this many contributions and now they're ready to be bumped up to the next status. So make sure that you're being cognizant of your work too and presenting it to people so that they can appreciate that effort too.
Snaps all around for that response as well. All right, so we have a lot of channels, as everyone knows, especially real-time channels, other communication channels, decision-making channels, etc. What channels do you all use to feel like you are super up to date with what's going on, especially with what you need specifically? Because everybody does need a little bit something different from project as far as communication is concerned. So what channels are they that are super useful to folks that they should be plugged into?
So first and foremost, Slack is primarily my communication mechanism. Email failing that, but email is mostly a fire hose. I think learning what you don't want to learn is important too. So there is too much information going around, so understanding how to filter that down, whether it's using email filters or making sure that Slack is on Do Not Disturb all the time. So I'll just read off some of the channels that I'm in that I think are super useful right now in Slack. Contributor Summit, Diversity, Kate's Infra Team, SIG Architecture, SIG Azure, SIG Cloud Provider, SIG Contrib X, SIG Docs, SIG PM, SIG Release, and SIG Testing. Those are my top ones.
I'd like to second a few of those. SIG Docs, SIG Release, and SIG Testing. From a general point of view, without going into like specific what you're working on for your day job, those always provide a lot of information that is useful, both in the state of the project and if there's any problems. Another one is also Kubernetes security channel.
Oh, that was a good one.
SIG Release especially.
Nope, I was just going to call on you to give your opinion. My bad, I'm sorry.
That's all good. SIG Release is especially great to hop into closer to release time if you really want to get like the ebb and flow of how things are going with the entire release process.
And then what else outside of Slack? Sam, what do you keep up with outside of Slack?
There's also Twitter that you can like follow us, or tag Kubernetes, and you can see kind of different people posting different things about Kubernetes.
Am I the only one that filters KDev on here?
So
I was going to say Steven.
Yeah. So again, this is kind of like deciding what you're most interested in. So Kubernetes users mailing group, the Kubernetes dev mailing group, depending on how much email you want to see, you may decide to filter that down to a daily or a weekly digest. All of the SIGs that I mentioned, I subscribe to their mailing lists as well. Depending on how interested I am day to day, I may filter again down to the daily or the weekly digest. And then once you start seeing yourself really, really involved in the repos day to day, you may want to figure out how to filter your GitHub notifications as well, because that's a crazy fire hose. So I watch K-Community. Repo-wise, I also watch the features repo, so I can kind of understand what is coming down the pipe in the next few releases. Outside of that, I pop into Test Infra. I follow all the Azure stuff because I'm supposed to, and I also follow the SIG Release repo. So.
And if you really want to know, like, this is a terrible idea, but I want to mention, because I tried it once, if you really want to know, like, everything is going on in Kubernetes org, you can subscribe to FedaBot group, which that's a group. Feel free to try out, and you'll get all the common, like, FedaBot react to each PR.
If somebody out there doesn't know what FedaBot is, explain what FedaBot is.
Yeah, FedaBot is a robot created by Eric Feda. Basically, people are asking him like, "Hey, my PR hits a flake," and my PR has already got LGTM and approved, but it's not merged due to testing fakes. What do I do? Normally, they ask in stick testing because it's a testing failure. So someone will go in their PR and /retest to trigger their failed test. But that seems to happen more and more often. And so first thing first, we probably need to deflake our test to make our test better. But on top of that, we automated that retest process. So if your PR has already been approved and LGTM'd, but your PR is hitting a test failure, there's this Feda bot will come in every hour and dump a /retest under your PR. Try to help you to get your PR merged.
Awesome Feda bot description. All right, I think we have one-ish more questions. Does anybody on the panel want to ask anyone else questions that is here? Is this your first open source project that you will all have contributed to? And if not, what are the other projects that you do contribute to?
So it's not my first, but it kind of led. Everything was leading to Kubernetes. So my story for getting more involved in the upstream community was that I was working on Tectonic at CoreOS, and there were some things that I wanted to know about Azure that I didn't know yet or didn't exist either in the Terraform side or the cloud provider side. So I kind of started pushing up the stack. So first I went to the Terraform project and I was like, hey, it doesn't do this thing. I would like it to do this thing. And they were like, hey, you could just do it yourself. I was like, okay, I'll try that. But I still needed information from the Kubernetes group. So I started hanging out in SIG Azure meetings and just like sucking up as much as I could. And then I was like, okay, I have enough tools now to go finish the Terraform thing and then add it to Tectonic and then go make a customer happy, right? So it was kind of this nice little chain, but everything was leading to Kubernetes and everything kind of pushed back into Kubernetes. So.
Sen, is this your first open source project that you've contributed to?
Yes. I mean, I have been using GitHub before, for example, for my University of Michigan final design project for a video game, and we open sourced that. Is that count as open source? It's not a big project though. But I mean, Kubernetes is definitely the first real open source project. I mean,
and Bob and Jeff, I think you've got some small ones, right, under your belt?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, Echo. Sorry. We do a lot of. I shouldn't say a lot, but a bunch of the development we do in house, we also open source. But I mean, that's like specific resources and containers that we build for our purposes. We open source and people can pull them. Kubernetes is definitely the like largest, and I would consider like first big open source project that I've worked on.
Yeah. The other thing is we tend to contribute to a lot of like other research software engineering projects, but those tend to like live off in Bitbucket and other places that aren't nearly as open as discoverable as some of these other things. But you'll find them in like a bunch of different HPC centers and things like that. Kubernetes is by far the biggest and most public project, though.
All right. Yeah, we actually asked that on the last contributor survey that we did, and I did peruse the raw data last night, and it does look like a good amount of our respondents have Kubernetes as a first-time open source project, so I think that's really cool. And especially since Kubernetes is so large, and I think it's a good data point. All right. And then we have a debugging tool question. So we're switching context completely. What are some useful debugging tools for Kubernetes development?
For me personally, one of the biggest value adds that I got was I use Visual Code, Microsoft Code, and it has a slew of integrations, including it checks schema, so that helps. It'll actually tell you if like you were missing something that's required or if something's wrong. And then you can also integrate that with your Golang environment. And then, I mean, from there, it's just having a good IDE.
So one thing to add is when you're debugging like EDE test, we have a triage dashboard, which is go.case.io/triage. You can basically, when you see your EDE test is failing, you can search for, is it failing across, is this like a far across the world? Is it like I introduced the failure, or it's like a generic flake across the project. It's very useful when we actually debugging release blocking issues.
All right. Anybody else have anything to add for debugging tools?
Yeah, so I mean, just in terms of PR submission and stuff, a lot of the stuff that we run against the PRs already exists in the repos. So there are like hack directories that have a bunch of different scripts. It's not necessarily strictly debugging, but it gives you an idea of some of the workflow that that the code goes through before it's accepted. So running through, I can't even name one. What is it? We have a verify all script or something like in Kubernetes that will take like an hour to run or something like that. But that script breaks out each of the different components that you can take a look at and kind of understand like how we're building the containers, and then we're running certain tests for those containers, and then tearing that stuff down and then pushing it out. So I think that's one good resource, just checking the hack repo for each of the respective repos that you look at. Two, I think a really good debugging tool is people, right? Just being able to bounce ideas off of people in the community. You often end up doing the like rubber ducking, right? You'll talk yourself through a problem and then realize like you already had the solution for it. So I think just having someone to talk to, and we're all someone to talk to, it's a great resource.
Also, one more tip is don't be shy. You probably cannot predict like what this change will break. Just send your PR, and as long as a maintainer add a OK to test label, just utilize CI to see, hey, I break those two tests, and you can give a public Kubernetes link to probably SIG testing or other SIGs to say, hey, can someone help me to figure out why those two tests is failing? Is it due to my changes, or is there some breakage going on?
So about the needs okay to test label. So the needs okay to test label gets dropped on PRs for people who have not signed the contributor license agreement, I believe, right? Paris. So that essentially says like you're a new contributor. So you have to sign the CLA first, and then after that, I will say that everyone who is on the project is super generous with marking things need OK to test, right? Which OK to test, the OK to /OK to test command will remove the needs OK to test label, and that will cause some CI stuff to kick off.
I think you need to be a KATES org member in order to opt out of OK to test.
Oh, right. So many rules.
We're learning together, y'all. We are learning together. Well, that's it. That's it for our show today. You have at least 5 minutes of your life back. Same with our folks that are watching. Next month is we'll be here for November. If anybody out there is interested in being a panelist as a mentor, please reach out to me on Slack. I'm in the Meet Our Contributors channel, or direct message me. And then our next edition today, just as a reminder, is at 1 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. UTC. And that is our steering committee edition. And yes, you can ask them why your test is flaking. I would love to know if they would dig into that. I might ask myself. And again, all things project governance related. P.S. We have a steering committee election going on. And yes, it ends in a few hours. If you have not voted, please do so. And that's it for me. Panelists, thank you so much. If you could stay on after we cut the stream, that would be awesome. But that's it for us today. Thanks so much, everybody. See you
Later,
in a
everyone.
few hours.